G'day ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to a Heart of the Swarm replay cast. I've got here for you today, it is a PvP. We haven't had one of these for a little while. I don't think, I haven't actually looked back on what we've had up on the channel lately, but it is one that was sent over to me by one of our players, and down at the bottom right hand side of Akalon Waste, he is a new recruit to the TtSEED Root Gaming Seed team. It is Bones. You may have heard of Bones before. I have done quite a few casts of him over on the channel here on YouTube. You can have a look through, and he plays a really interesting style. It's not necessarily like a sort of a totally passive style, but he is generally a very sort of macro-orientated player who looks to try and take small advantages and then just play out a long macro game against his opponents, and particularly in PvP. I've been able to cast quite a few games where he's played against some really top-notch players and just sort of out-macros them and particularly out-compositions them, if that's a word. I don't know if that's a thing, but we're going to make it a thing. But yeah, he's got this really passive style, and it can be really interesting to watch how he plays. So we'll see how he goes here today. As I said, he has recently joined up with the TtSEED sponsored Root Gaming Seed team. It's effectively like an academy squad. He was formerly on the Clarity Gaming Academy team and has now moved over to the Seed team and is the captain of that team. He's the oldest player there. He is from over in, where is he? Ontario in Canada, if I remember correctly. You can find his stream over on twitch.tv/Zeppelin with numbers on the side. I've already written there for you guys, so you already know where it is. His opponent, meanwhile, up at the top left-hand side, and our blue Protoss over here goes by the name of Serenity. He is also a high-level GM player on the NA server and is a part of the Gravity gaming team. So we'll see how these two guys go. As I said, very high-quality caliber players here from the NA scene, and we'll see how they decide to do their respective builds and their particular play styles. As I mentioned, Bones is he's a much more passive kind of macro kind of player, whereas Serenity, he is a little bit more aggressive every now and then. I have seen, I did get to watch, I jumped onto the Gravity Gaming YouTube channel to watch a couple of the games, and I actually found one with Serenity, and yeah, he's a little bit more of an aggressive player, so we'll see how he goes here in this PvP. So PvP, of course, a matchup where things, they've been changing over time. I think lately things have been a little bit more static than they used to be. Back in earlier days of Heart of the Swarm, where things were just constantly changing back and forth. Of course, you get various kinds of openings here. We can already see that these two guys are doing something a little bit different from each other. We've got the two gates now coming up from Serenity. He took his two gases earlier, still sitting on 2 workers in each of those at the moment. Going to chrono boost that cybernetic score just a tiny bit, but we'll also have some chrono boost available to get these first 3 stalkers out. And this is a very common way which a lot of players utilize to try and take some early game aggressive advantages. You can head out with the 3 stalkers and try and find out where your opponent's probe is. A lot of the time, as Bones has done here, you'll try and hide the probe somewhere out on the map so that you can get your own counter aggression going later on, but it has been found. So Bones is, we'll see if he loses that probe there. Back at home for Bones, he's done his very traditional kind of style here that he likes to open up with, which is just it's a very simple kind of thing. We get one of each unit out. He gets a single sentry, a zealot, and also a stalker. This is something that used to be done quite a lot during earlier renditions of Wings of Liberty, when players would like to have a little bit of a mix of each kind of unit just to make sure that they were protected against all kinds of things. But as you can see, Serenity, with his 2 gates back at home, we're about to finish up a 30. So he's Robo on the way as well. He's going to come across and try and put some aggression on against Bones, but Bones, with his force field prepared, is all good to go. All he needs to do is to throw down this force field that we see here, and that blocks off the ramp for a little bit. He should have another force field very soon, which he can utilize, or in fact, there's the 2nd sentry, so he's got that available. And these stalkers, we'll see how much damage they can get done if you're able to somehow get you know, somehow get up that ramp, you can get quite a lot of work done here. As you said, this is a very common way to be nice and aggressive in a PvP. Bones' second gate only finishing up now. He did get a Stargate rolling, and the only thing that he's brought out of that so far is that single Phoenix. So this is you know, going to be a very interesting time here for Bones. It's quite similar. I kind of open up a similar kind of way, just the one into 2 gates, and then you get a couple of Phoenix out to figure out what's going on. But as you can see, both players still macroing up back at home. For the moment, Serenity has continually been blocked off. Always keep in mind when it comes to force fielding a ramp that you do need 4.5 sentries. Obviously, you get a 5th because you can't have half a sentry, but it only takes 4.5 or 5 sentries to continuously force field off a ramp. So we'll probably see Bones grab a 5th sentry. Yeah, there it is. So he does grab a 5th sentry, and that means that he can just keep his opponent at bay. You just got to be careful with being very reactive to what is going on, and you know, this gives him the advantage here where he just can continually block this off. But in the meantime, Serenity now has complete map control because he does have those stalkers out, and it looks as if we may be going up to possibly Blink here for Serenity with that Twilight Council now finishing up. There's the Chrono Boost, and the Blink tech does get started. Behind that, he also has the Nexus at the Natural as well. Serenity is continually, he's got the high ground vision there now with that Observer that has come across the map. Bones, meanwhile, we're trying to see what he's going to do about this aggression coming out of his opponent. A 3rd gate finishing up, Robo Facility on the way, and also a Stargate. This is a very, kind of a standard way that Bones likes to open up. He likes to have all those options available, and it's, you know, it's not a weakness. It's quite a lot of a strength there when you can just make sure that you do have all those kinds of units that you need, whether it be a Void Ray that we do see coming out, whether it be an Immortal for that extra little bit of power and kick in your army, or you know, obviously the aggressive kinds of units like the Phoenix that we can see here. Just a single Phoenix is out at the moment for Bones. So the worker count is currently very even, both the players still continuing to get out a couple of these guys every now and then. Void Ray is now popped out, which means that Bones is going to force his way down the ramp. So he should be able to set up his natural. Of course, you know, the timings are going to be completely different in terms of their economic position here. As we can see, Serenity is going to have his double pro production a little bit earlier than his opponent, or in fact quite a lot earlier, I suppose, given that the Nexus is not even, or it's only just been started up for Bones. But he will also have a little bit of a tech advantage here. What he does need to be careful of is investing a little bit too much into Stalkers. This is something which you do see from time to time. When people go for Blink, they will just continuously bring out the Blink Stalkers and try and be aggressive with them. They'll lose some, and then back at home, their tech has not really been sort of evolved any further. So sometimes you can see people get caught out by that kind of thing. And speaking of getting caught out, here comes Serenity pushing up the ramp. The Time Warp and a couple of force fields do leave a couple of the Stalkers broken and bruised at the ramp, but they do blink back, and Immortal and that charged up Void Ray are going to keep an eye on things. But Bones is going to get his own aggression going with a few of those Phoenix now starting to pop out. You can see that Bones is being very, very careful with that Mothership Door. You always do need to keep that little shiny disco ball up in the air as long as possible. If you do lose it, it can mean, it can sometimes, I'm not even kidding, it can mean life and death in a PvP, just simply because the Time Warp is extremely useful. Obviously the Photon Overcharge is also a very strong thing to keep in mind as well. But Bones does get across with his own Phoenix. He's got 3 of them there. Going to be able to lift up quite a few probes, and interestingly enough, as we can see, the work kill tally actually favors the Seed player for the moment. So do we call them Seed players or Root Gaming players? We'll go with Root Gaming players just because I think that's a cooler term. But yeah, so he's been able to disrupt his opponent's economy a little bit. It doesn't necessarily mean that he can, of course, because of the double production that Serenity has had this entire time. It means that his worker count is just a bit higher at the moment. We can see that it is 43 to 35. But let's have a look at what tech is going on back here for Serenity. He has his Templar Archives on the way. A couple of Stalkers inside the main are going to defend against those Phoenix that are floating about, but he is opening up some of his tech paths, which is really what we do like to see here. He's still continuously threatening at the front, trying to snipe down some of these units. Bones with wonderful micro. He's able to keep that Void Ray back. That has been like the flavor of the month, is Void Ray micro. Of course, if anyone was watching IEM, you'll know what I'm talking about. Naniwa with his amazing Void Ray micro against Hydras was just incredible to watch. But anyway, we can see, as you said, that with the Templar Archives coming up, this allows Serenity to move into the very, very popular kind of composition that people use these days, which is Archon Immortal. And, you know, while Bones does have quite a few of these Immortals out, I do know that he is quite a fan of the much higher tech kind of things, like the Tempest and those kinds of things. You know, Tempest Void Ray and Templar, I think, is his kind of standard go-to composition that he loves to play around with. But the Phoenix are still scouting out what's going on. We'll continually have these battles at the front door here. Bones with some good micro should be able to keep a lot of these Immortals alive. In fact, he's going to now move out. He's going to go on the front foot trying to catch out Serenity, but he decides that's perhaps not the best of ideas. The Phoenix are still looking for a few kills. And keep in mind the total worker kill is now at 12 for Bones, so he's been able to slowly but surely eke his way back into a lead here in the worker count, 46 to 48. Bones just in front. But right now the Blink Stalkers are deciding they want to have some of this action here. We can see that the total of Blink Stalkers still sitting at 25, but he is still bringing out a few more, and Serenity, he just wants to try and lock his opponent down, maybe try and keep this Immortal count down. As, you know, as we said before, Immortal Archon is probably one of the big go-tos in this particular matchup. But Bones with some micro there, pulling back one of the injured Immortals now. We can see Serenity blinking back his own units there, trying to keep as many of those Stalkers alive as possible. That is a big thing about picking up the Blink tech, is that if you stay efficient with your Blink Stalkers, they can be very, very useful for quite a long time, more so, obviously, than even some more efficient units like Immortals and things like that. So we can see the Bones is going to continually have this big group of Blink Stalkers poking forwards. For the first of the Colossi are now out here for Bones as well. He's got another one on the way, and also is getting his extended thermal lance. We can see that the upgrade's starting to come out for both players as well. Protoss ground weapons here for Bones, and also for Serenity are now just on their way out, just at level 1 at the moment. These guys have been sort of, whether you're Bones or whether you're Serenity, there's always been, you've got to be careful at their respective positions. So Bones has not really had time to grab any of those upgrades until now, and we can see with Serenity still controlling quite a lot of the positioning of Bones. He's going to take his third base just a tiny bit quicker here, just behind the rocks here on Accolon. Of course, one of the bases that can be nice and easily defended. We can see that you can drop down some rocks here, get rid of these ones, and then you've got an easy path back and forwards. But speaking of back and forwards, the army of Serenity is starting to, this is starting to get really daring. Now, you're kind of wondering, why is this a little bit daring, Dougville? Well, the reason this is starting to get a bit worrisome here for Serenity is that if he continually tries to battle with these Colossi, the Zealots are going to take all the damage, the Immortals are going to deal their ridiculous anti-armor damage. They're 55 per shot now with their plus-1 weapons, and the Colossi will always get those shots off, so he has to be very, very careful about that. And I think from now, Serenity just needs to be very careful. In fact, he is going to do a little bit of a run by or a blink by, perhaps depending on how you want to look at it, but he does snipe a couple of probes, gets the Stalkers back out of the way, and now Bones is looking to perhaps capitalize on his opponent not being aware of what was going on. Serenity is losing quite a lot of his units there, and more on the way back out do get sniped off. This Observer still here and is able to keep an eye on what's going on, but that's kind of what I was worried about with Serenity. If he sort of sticks around too long, Blink Stalkers, they can be very, very efficient, and you can make use of them for a very long period of the game. But at some point, you're going to have to back off. Robotech just becomes too strong there, as you can see. And with 3 Colossi out, we've got still 4 Immortals out here for Bones. His tech coming along, we can see, is going to be the Storm on the Templar Archives. We've got +2 on the weapons on the way, along with Charge just about to finish up as well. And we'll probably see him start to move into a third base very soon. In fact, sorry, it's already going up. But Serenity, well, this is a little bit of where I was worried about. He does have his Storm tech is... oh no, sorry, it's not done. I thought he would have started it by now. He hasn't actually gotten that started just yet, but does have extended thermal lance on the way, and had a massive bank for a moment there. We did see his bank up at around about 1,000 and something on his minerals, so he had quite a lot to spend, and he's going to utilize some of that on cannons. We'll get some more gateways going down, as we can see, and of course we'll probably see maybe some higher tech production start to come out as well, with the first 2 Colossi already out here for Serenity. We've got we don't really have too much else other than that. Just a couple of Colossi and a few gateway units. In fact, there is an Immortal stuck sort of behind the head of that, or the Colossi and the Mothership core there. But This is, you know, this is the part where Bones really starts to assert quite a lot of dominance I've seen in a lot of his PvPs. We'll actually see him picking up the second Stargate. I would not be surprised if, yeah, there we go. The Fleet Beacon does go down. We'll probably start to see Tempest production coming out of our Root Gaming Seed player very soon, as he looks to start to control the tempo of this game. This is quite a lot of what I do get to see from Bones, and it is a reason why I personally really like to watch his streams. He has this wonderful tempo control where he'll slowly but surely start to just take control of the map, start to pick up his extra bases and these kinds of things, and then just be in a really strong position when it comes to the later stages of the game. So we can see that his opponent has been able to get his 4th base just about up and running. We've also got Archons now coming out for Serenity. A second Robo is also in the mix to allow him to get some more Colossus production coming out. I'm a little bit surprised that he is still deciding to go with the Colossus for the moment. As we said before, Colossi, they've sort of fallen out of favor for multiple reasons. Colossus can be, they can be weirdly kited a little bit. I don't know if that's perhaps the best term, but they can be sort of, I don't know, it's really hard to explain, but sometimes I've seen them, people just try and take advantage of the fact that their fire rate is sometimes kind of slow, and you can use Zealots, you can use Immortals, you can use Archons and those kinds of things. So they do get, of course, blasted down by Immortals and also by Tempest if a player decides to move into them later on in the game. So this is, you know, this is why we have started to see a little bit of a switch these days in PvP over to Immortal Archon, which is a very powerful kind of mixture. You use the Archons to tank and do a lot of damage, especially to Zealots, and then of course you've got the Immortals, which are just ridiculous against all kinds of Protoss units. But Bones, as I mentioned before, loving a bit of Tempest action. He does have 2 already out, another couple are on the way. We've got +3 to weapons just about to finish up here for him as well. He's got his +1 on air weapons now on the way too, so he's going to have a nice little advantage in the air. His opponent now getting a Fleet Beacon as well. Lots more gates now, just about to finish up here for Serenity. There is a Warp Prism making its way down towards the southern edge of the map. We can see that Bones may actually scout out that his opponent has this extra base here. Yes, he does. So Bones may decide to try and do something about that. That is a very greedy base there for Serenity. He's just decided, you know what, if we're going to play a bit of a macro game, I'm going to try and take this one and take a little bit of an advantage, and we'll see if Bones is going to try and punish that. One thing he's certainly going to punish is his Warp Prism here. A last shot from the Tempest, that Resonance Coil, holy moly, it does, or sorry, the Kinetic Overload, if you want to go and get all technical about it, it does quite a lot of damage there. So Bones now starting to move into this sort of mixture of Sky Toss and then a little bit of that Robo Toss on the ground, I guess. Is going to maintain quite a lot of control here. We can see that Bones is also, this is what just a little thing that he is doing, is just throwing around a couple of Zealots to see if he can scout out any of his opponent's proxy pylons. Serenity, he is going to be able to set up some defense over on this left side base. I wonder if how long he's going to be able to keep that up and running. But one thing he has switched here is the Immortals. He is going to grab more and more of those chunky little guys on the ground, the little, I suppose, robotic turtles in a way. They are tanky and they can do quite a lot of damage. I've been bitten by a turtle before. I'm not even kidding. I'm like a tortoise, maybe? Is it tortoise that have feet and not flippers? I don't know. I'm not a turtle expert. I'm not a reptile. What's the term for that? I can't remember. But anyway, Bones is he's really starting to put together this mixture that we do like to see. The Tempest and also the Archons. We'll probably see. Has he got a couple of those? Yeah, he's got a few of these High Templar here. They're just there to throw out storms. And you say, what are you going to storm in a Protoss army? Well, one thing that we do see from Protoss players quite a lot in the late game is they'll start to switch over into Void Rays, and Void Rays have the amazing ability of many of the units in StarCraft 2 do, which is to clump up, and Void Rays with a couple of storms thrown on top of them, it can completely turn a battle. So that is something which you do always have to keep an eye out for, and is another reason why sometimes this Archon Immortal mixture can be very, very strong, is because they're not the most clumpy of units because they're extremely big. So they do tend to, you know, they take up a lot more space, which means they're a little bit less of a target for things like storms. But Bones is going to take his own 5th base up towards the top right-hand side here, which looks as if Serenity is not going to scout it just yet. I don't think he was able to see. No, he hasn't actually seen that base yet, but he does have a single Zealot that has made its way into this base. In fact, I think it may have been 2. But this game has just sort of turned into a little bit of a passive state right now. Bones, what is this? Have we got... There there it is. Sorry, I was wondering why the screen wasn't moving. We have a mothership on the way. How long has it been since you've seen one of these? I'm sure I would possibly even say there could be players out there who have never actually seen a mothership before. If you weren't following StarCraft 2 before Heart of the Swarm, then you may not have seen one, because you rarely, if ever, see it these days in Heart of the Swarm, particularly in PvP. I mean, you know, you may see it sometimes in PvZ when it gets to late game stages, but as we can see, we're going to have a very big battle here. Bones moving forward with his Archons and the Templar as well. Serenity has got a lot of his units moving up to the front. The Templar and the Tempest have need to be very, very careful here. But of course, you've got to keep in mind, these guys do a huge amount of damage. The kinetic overload on the Tempest does a massive amount of damage there. And especially when you start to factor in that these Tempests now have +2 on their air weapons, and that is going to really, really help out Bones when it comes to these battles. He can just smash down those Colossi extremely quickly. And then from the back, as we can see, we've got the cloak activated. Unfortunately, there is a single observer in here that Serenity has been able to keep online, and that is one thing which used to be a big part of PvP when it got to late game stages. But as you can see, Bones is just wrecking all of those units there. The Archons on the ground were able to take care of most of the units there for Serenity. So it looks as if Bones is going to keep a reasonable amount of, well, pretty much all of his Tempests alive there. As we have a quick look at the units lost tally, it actually does favor Bones at this point. So just a little bit of an advantage there, I suppose. Almost 14,000 units. 14,000 resources, the difference there, I should say. And Bones, he's been able to keep this base alive, which was a little bit under threat here. But as you can see, Serenity, he's going to remax with his Archons now coming out. We've got a whole bunch of those cotton balls just on the top of the cliff here. Stalker's being built as well. Let's take a quick peek on those upgrades here for these guys. We've currently got the upgrades, not too bad here for Serenity. I would love to see a little bit more going into the shields here. We'll probably see that very soon. He's sitting on 213 for all of his ground units at the current time. We don't have any air upgrades at the moment though, so any possible air switch for him is going to be lacking when it comes to the power compared to the air units and the air upgrades that Bones has. As we can see, those Tempests are currently sitting on +2 on their weapons. They're going to have +1 armor very soon. The ground units here for Bones has 203. He's slightly behind, of course, but it is not too much of a worry. If you're going for a much higher capacity Skytoss style, you can afford to sort of drop off a couple of these upgrades. Like, it's not too bad that he doesn't have the +3 on the armor for the ground units, you know, because he's got the extra damage here on these Tempests, and of course we may even see a couple of Void Rays. Yeah, a couple more Void Rays now starting to come out for Bones. Would not be surprised if he decides to add in a few more Stargates as well, just so he has that extra little bit of production. Now the Void Rays do help out in one particular way, and that is dealing with these Blink Stalkers. Stalkers can be very, very annoying to deal with when you've got a high Tempest count, because they blink underneath and target them down. And a beautiful feedback there from Serenity. We can see the Bones is now moving forwards. That storm is just massive. And Bones is able to wreak a lot of havoc there. A couple of the Colossi have decided it's time for a day off. They're going to stand back for the moment. But the Tempest and the Storm is the big story of that battle there. That also, that Time Warp at the back was beautifully done by Bones. So he's been able to just continually force his opponent back. And to try and combat that, Serenity has decided, I need to take a 6th base. And we may even see him take a 7th base very soon, just because of the fact that he will have, obviously, the resources to do it. He's really banking up quite hard right now is the US Protoss player here. So Bones is going to defend his base with a few of these DTs just marching their way over to the Zealots. Going to compete with them quite easily. No detection over here for Serenity, so these Zealots are going to back off for now. And this is, you know, this is a very interesting kind of situation, because this could be considered a little bit of a waste. Like, I mean, he does have a nice bank, but if you're not going to be able to kill off these bases, then it can be a little bit of a waste. I mean, he could be perhaps back at home setting up more Stargates, setting up for a possible switch into air, trying to catch up with those air upgrades. I mean, it's I'm a little bit dubious about the fact that he has not decided to try and even pursue some of those air upgrades. Like, I mean, it can be very, very hard in a PvP to try and switch over into air if you're already behind. But I mean, you know, it's something that you may want to consider at this point. But of course, Bones here with some great defense is able to protect those cannons. The Probe is saying, no, we will not have you in here at all. And the cannons alongside DTs are able to force back those Zealots from our Blue Protoss here. And Serenity, well, he's decided to perhaps try and push in on this base here. What is the third/fourth base of Bones is under siege a little bit, but the Tempest are coming across and are easily able to deal with that right now. As you can see, this is a point where I'm not even kidding, you may see some of the players start to drop some of their probe count. You don't necessarily need a huge amount of these probes. You can perhaps back off maybe to around about the sort of the 60-55 mark. You don't necessarily have to have a huge amount out right now. But one thing, as I said, I'm still a little bit worried about is Serenity's lack of ability to deal with the huge Sky Tusk army that Bones is starting to accumulate. We've got Void Rays, we've got all of those Tempests here. The Mothership is still out. There was a beautiful feedback before from Serenity, but that is not going to be able to do too much right now. Of course, you know, the Mothership, it doesn't actually do as much awesome stuff as it used to. Of course, those from Wings of Liberty will remember the wonderful Vortex, or perhaps not wonderful if you're a Zerg player, but the Vortex was, of course, something which was like a really useful tool, and it was quite useful in PvP as well. It basically came down to a situation of who can Vortex the other player's units first, and that certainly could decide a battle. But Bones, he has got his Mothership out, and this helps out with just the factor of, does my opponent have detection? In this army, we can see that Serenity does have 3 observers. Very, very diligent with that. But we have another battle here at the top of the map. It looks like Serenity has been caught out slightly. Some of the units up on the top edge of that have been taking quite a lot of heat from the Tempest. The Blink Stalkers coming forward, jumping straight into what is essentially a quagmire of a Time Warp there, and they will be slowed down for a bit, taking a little bit of damage. But Bones, he needs to be careful here. I'm just a little bit worried about some of these Tempests being a little bit out of position here. They do have really good backup with a lot of Templar, a lot of these ground units as well, but just needs to be careful about that. So Bones, as we said before, a very passive player, but a very diligent one who's ready and willing to switch over his particular compositions on the fly. And in this particular situation, of course, as we can see, he's still continuing to do that. We're going to have his 6th base up and running very, very soon. If he gets that extra little bit of gas coming in, that is going to be quite helpful for him. But Serenity, he's got a huge amount of the Archons out right now. These guys have got 3/2/3 on their upgrades, looking for the +3 on the shields very soon. I'm still a little bit, still don't have any air upgrades. I mean, it's not as if he doesn't have the bank. I know Protoss stuff does cost a lot of gas, but I mean, at this point, you can probably look towards getting a few of those upgrades just in case you have an option of switching over. And, you know, you may be thinking, what are you going to switch over to? Well, some people, I've seen people try carriers, but I mean, if a competent Protoss player is going to be able to target them down with the Tempest, I think basically the only way you can really switch over and perhaps try and combat this is to either do what Serenity may be looking to do right now, which is to send in a few multiple attacks, come into the 3rd base, come into the natural as well, maybe try and look at going into that extra base on the side as well, just trying to split the army apart. This army is very, very strong when it's all in a big clump. Of course, when it starts to split up, things get a little bit dicey. If the Tempests don't have the support from the ground, they can be targeted down by Stalkers. Of course, if some of the other units start to split up, they can't do it in various situations as well. But Serenity, unfortunately, he has not been able to split up too much, but one thing he has done here, which is excellent, is send over a pylon to get inside and do some harassment here in the main base. There are DTs warping in for Bones to try and defend this position. It looks like he should be able to defend it. This is one thing which is a really quirky part of PvP drop play like this, is when you drop in some units to try and attack someone's base, but then you don't have observers to snipe off DTs that are generally a really good defensive unit. And once again, Bones is going to show us that here with a single DT, going to help out these cannons in protecting this base. He should be able to protect it, I'd say, but that is just a really sort of interesting little paradox in PvP, is when you have to defend with a DT and then your opponent has no observers, so they can't deal with that kind of defense as well. But as you can see, Bones with a few DTs back at home, and Observer is also camping out there just to keep an eye on things. But Serenity, he finally sends in an Observer and is able to snipe off the DT that was causing him so much grief. We can see now that the Wolf Prism made its way back inside the main. Cannons are now building up more DTs here for Bones. Serenity has certainly learnt his lesson, has an Observer here for some spotting inside that main base. But while this is all going on, of course, Bones trying to move through the middle of the map with all of his big units, but they're out of position, and this is what we were looking for before, trying to take advantage of that little bit of immobility that exists within this kind of army. But of course, then you think about it, well, it's as the bird flies, as it were. Those Tempests, the Void Rays, the Mothership, and all those units on the ground are now coming in, perhaps getting a pretty decent surround on all of Serenity's units. In fact, yes, they will. Coming in from all sides, it looks like the Mothership Core is going to look to perhaps drop a Time Warp just over here to slow down some of those units. Will he be able? There he goes. Beautifully done. Bones with some wonderful multitasking there is able to slow down the units, disposes of that entire army. And Serenity is now definitely on the back foot, down at 107 supply. He's got warp-ins galore coming into the main base here. Zealot and DT is pretty much the only thing that he's going to need in here. There's no need for any of those other units. But the bad thing about these kind of units, well, they aren't too good against Tempest. Last time I checked it out in the Blizzard UI for the help screen last time. So it looks as if Bones should be able to defend this in the end of it. But that force field is very, very cute. I love that, by the way. But, yeah, Bones saving the majority of his main base tech. We've still got the Fleet Beacon, the Cyber, all of these kind of tech buildings are still alive. I think we only really lost some of those gates that were there as well. We can see the gate count has actually dropped to 7 for Bones, so he has suffered a little bit at the hands of his opponent. Serenity's now sending in a couple more DT to this attempted 5th base, or the reconstruction of the 5th base here for Bones. But it looks as if Bones, well, he's going to try and head back. His slow units are now lumbering their way up the ramp. We'll see if they can hold back some of these Zealots. What is Serenity doing behind all of this? It looks as if he is just doing what I suggested before, just trying to warp in some more units and just harass his opponent's tech. I would love to see him perhaps targeting down some of these extra tech buildings here, such as the Cyber, such as the Fleet Beacon, the Stargates as well. If you can sort of cut down a little bit of that and slow down your opponent's production of those high-level units, then you may be able to somehow take advantage of that. But as we can see, for Serenity, he is going back to a sort of an issue that we see quite a lot with the Zerg players actually do quite a lot when they're starting to struggle with keeping up with the high-powered tech army of a Protoss, and that is reverting to just simply sticking with very low cost and I guess like the sort of the in this situation, they're kind of a very low-cost kind of solution to dealing with air, and that's to go for mass stalk. Very similar to when a Zerg player scrambles to build just like 90 Lings or something like that to try and deal with, you know, like Archons and Colossi and stuff like that. It's like, well, that's probably not going to work out too well. But I mean, as we can see, Serenity now starting to have a little bit of trouble with his mineral bank right now, but he has remaxed reasonably well. He's up to 144 supply, lots of that in Stalkers at the moment. Stalkers, a single Templar. There is a Warp Prism out on the map somewhere. Where is it? It's going over down to the southern side of the map yet again. Got to try and get some more warp ins here in this main base. But Bones, well, he secured his 5th. He secured his 6th. And we're all but ready to go here with our Root Gaming Seed player. He's getting everything nice and ready to rumble. Lots of Archons out, a few Tempest as well, not to mention that single Colossus, that Hero Colossus with 14 kills. The Warp Prism does get inside. He's going to take out the Nexus, as we said. I would love to see the targeting on these few buildings here, just to make sure that they do go down, so that Bones doesn't have as much production as he would like to. But as you can see, Serenity now targeting down that 6th base. Excellent work from him. It is going to give him the ability to slow down his opponent's income, considering that his own income is starting to falter a little bit. But Bones, he is actually catching his opponent out just again. As you can see, the Blink Stalkers now blinking underneath the Tempest. We can't really see them. There they are underneath. They're going to take a Storm on top of them. The Tempests are also doing a lot of damage, going to just tear apart quite a lot of the Stalkers, and that is what I'm talking about. When Stalkers get to this point, 333 on their upgrades, it's all wonderful and good to have, but when you're contesting with those 8 Tempests up in the air, it gets very, very hard to deal with all of that huge damage that's coming out. And as you can see, Serenity, well, he's trying to get some remaxing going yet again. Lots of Stalkers now coming out. Both players starting to run a little bit dry on various sides of the boards. As we can see, Bones has got a huge amount of, well, a comparatively large amount of minerals available to him right now, but he also will need to rebuild that 6th base. But he has this indestructible almost army of Archons, Immortals, Templar, and the Tempest up in the air, controlling the skies, controlling the ground from long range as well. The unit count for our Blue Protoss here from the Gravity team, Serenity is sitting on 25 Stalkers. This is going to be a very, very tough battle for him right now. Bones starting to move his way up the ramp, and that makes it even harder for Serenity. So he decides, let's try and catch out a couple of these. He's moving to the top of the cliff. If he was able to perhaps spam the stop micro on the top of the cliff, he may be able to have kept those alive a little bit longer, because you can't see those units if they're not firing. But obviously at this stage of the game, it's not too much to worry about. Bones, of course, feeling very confident. He's going to march his way into the main base. Basically, all of the tech is available here to take down, and once that's all done, then I would say it is going to be big time here for Serenity, but he is going to try and find his way back. We've got more Stalkers, some Archons also going to link up with the rest of these forces. They're going to try and target down this 5th base. Bones is going to try and evacuate up towards the north. If he can get away, maybe he can keep a lot of those probes alive, but back inside the main base, where's the mothership around? Mothership Core is here, but unfortunately not with the rest of the army and doesn't have any energy. I was going to suggest perhaps a, perhaps a group up and a recall back home to try and keep this kind of weird quasi-base trade from happening right now. But, I mean, it's not as if there's a huge amount to worry for Bones. I mean, he's kept a lot of his probes alive. He can now just march his way down. As you can see, he can just head down these sorts of directions, take out these bases, and then just come straight across. That's the advantage of having these air units. There's a cliff there, who cares? I can just fly straight over it. So he is going to be able to maneuver himself around a little bit right now. The Mothership Core did move around. Okay, there it is. So it is going to try and establish a position here. Maybe able to get a Photon Overcharge down to help out in dealing with these Stalkers, but, you know, Bones has gotten a couple of Immortals out. That's, you know, that's just a little bit of adding a little bit of power to an already very powerful force here. Bones perhaps brought out a little bit. Blink Stalkers saying, hello boys, jumping right on top of the Tempest. Taking out 1, 2, 3, and 4. The Tempest now down to just a total of 4, but the Archons are going to come across. Blink Stalkers, they're going to have to be very, very careful with where they maneuver from here. Perhaps they could try and take advantage of this position where that rift in the middle is. Perhaps if he can maneuver around that a little bit, he might be able to find a way to take out some of these units. Bones has left a couple of Zealots in here to take care of some of these last remaining buildings inside the natural base of Serenity, but Serenity, he recognizes that he is in a little bit of trouble. He is the mouse and the cat is after him right now. The big Tempest, the Archons, the Immortals, and those Templar are all on their way. They sense it is time for a victory. And one really tough thing about this is that this position here for Serenity is going to make it a lot of trouble for him. A simple storm of right there is going to pretty much seal the game for Bones if it's not already sealed. I mean, as you can see, that this is a powerful part of the Tempest, which I think was originally designing these guys for, was the long-range siege, trying to allow protons away to try and slowly the initial position here. Serenity, he's going to try and work his way back around. He's got a little bit of a bank, and he's going to try and work back into some of these, but of course does need that cybernetic score back again. Tempest have been able to take out all of those buildings that were left over here. Probes will evacuate, but I don't think they have too far to go. Look at these guys, they're all wanting to fight right now. I think he's looking for us around here, coming in from both sides. Serenity, he's going to see if he can jump on these units right now, but I don't think that's going to happen too well. As we can see, the Tempest are just going to maneuver down the side. Storms all over the Blink Stalkers as they move underneath the Tempest. But I mean, how are you going to deal with this? There's Immortals, there's Archons, and there are even a few leftover Zealots, not to mention the remaining Storms and the Tempest that are able to do extra amounts of damage here. But Bones, well, you know, let's keep in mind, he's run out of gas at this point. He is looking to try and set up another Nexus at the top right-hand side, so he needs to be very efficient with these units. But, I mean, this is Tempest, this is Archons, Immortals, and all these things that are here. These are already very efficient units when it comes to the majority of these kinds of fights, especially when it's up against Blink Stalkers. So the game will continue on for a moment. We can see that Serenity is attempting to reset some of his infrastructure here. Cyber is finished up. We're going to get a Robo Bay as quickly as he can. I think he's perhaps, like, I'm trying to think of a composition that will be able to work against this, all of this stuff that Bones has. I mean, like, I don't know, maybe some Colossi or something, if he can suddenly get like 4 or 5 Colossi. But I mean, he doesn't have the bank for it. He's going to deal with the Tempest as well. The Archons are all here, and they are quite tanky at this point with their 3, 2 on their upgrades. That means that they're going to stay alive for quite long. So I think this may be it. Serenity coming forward. Bones does have a recall. Keep in mind, if he decides he doesn't want to take this fight, he can just say, I'll see you later, and peace out of there. He now doesn't have the energy for that, but he is going to be able to hold up position for a minute. 95 energy on that Mothership Core. And as you can see, Serenity, long distance mining from the top base, which is almost one of the only places you can get minerals from. This map is almost mined out at this point. But Bones is going to continue to want to charge around and try and take the fights here. He knows he has a much more powerful army compared to his opponent. And perhaps with a last roll of the dice, Serenity may be able to find a way to get back into this. But I mean, he's going to start struggling for gas very soon. The only gas guys is left on this map are these two over here and these extra two on this side as well. So it is going to be a bit of a struggle for gas intensive units. And you know, we mentioned it earlier on in the cast. What's something in the Protoss arsenal that isn't gas intensive? And I mean, you know, zealots. What we can do with zealots against all of these arsenals. So perhaps the last little fight here for these players. Bones coming across, Templar, Time Warp, all the things are now dropping down on to Serenity Stalker Army, and Bones dropping the hammer there, releasing a huge amount of damage on top of those Stalkers. And I mean, Serenity at this point, he's trying to find something, but it's not there. It's been a wonderful fight between these two players. They have been, back and forth for quite a while, but Bones eventually takes that victory. So, new recruit to the TtSEED team at Root Gaming. Bones has taken a victory here against Serenity. You can catch Bones on his stream. I believe Serenity has a stream there as on his Twitch channel as well. And hope you all enjoy the match. Catch you all next time. Here, as you can see, 47 damage to bio units and then the 34 damage against other standard targets. His storms have also been wonderful, just spreading them out across the battlefield, doing really, really nicely there. And for minigun, he's been sticking with a much more